So what's happening?
All right,
What do you want to ask me?
let's see. So let's start
I
with
can, and I can see you too. It's a nice glittery sax.
all right. When did you start playing the saxophone? How old were you?
I was 8 years old, I think, but I played um, drums before that because I had a musical dad and he had instruments in the house. So I first played drums and then a little bit of violin, and then saxophone is what I wanted to play from like 8 years old on.
Okay, cool. So when did you start playing the drums then?
Probably around six.
Okay, nice. And then I guess you just weren't a fan of the violin. That was just kind of an intermediate phase. On the alto or the
I
tenor?
thought it was cool to be learning how to play an instrument in school, and that's what they offered.
Okay,
I started on the alto.
interesting. All right. And when you started playing, who were you listening to? Did you have a favorite saxophone player at that point?
It's funny because my dad, being a saxophone player, was listening to jazz all the time, and he introduced me to John Coltrane like really early. And I mean, I was listening to that, but most of what I listened to at the time was pop music. I loved the Beatles, Sam and Dave. The Best of Sam and Dave was like a really important album to me when I was a kid, and I played and sax to that and sang to that. And what else? Santana, the album Abraxas with Black Magic Woman, and Bill Withers live at Carnegie Hall.
Okay.
Those were like staples of mine. And then, a bunch of other things, but, things in the, rock and soul kind of area. And then as I got a little bit older, I started to get more interested in jazz. And I listened to Miles Davis, all of those albums, Relaxin', Workin', Steamin', Round. I used to play along with those records all the time. So I guess my earliest influences were Coltrane and Cannonball Adderley.
Okay. Those are pretty good. So, were you playing alto the whole time, or did you switch to tenor at some point after a few years, maybe?
I played alto for, let me see, if I was 8 years old, I must have been in grade school. So I think when I was about 12 years old, I switched to tenor.
Okay.
And then it was tenor from there on in.
All right. Did you ever play flute or clarinet?
There was a flute around when I was a kid, and it was my dad's flute, and I just used to pick it up once in a while and eventually learned to play somewhat on my own because the fingering was similar.
Okay.
But I then took lessons when I was a little bit older. I guess I was maybe like 14 or 15. That's when I tried to learn a little bit more about the flute and play it better. And I still struggle with it to this day.
Yeah, yeah. I think I may be in a similar situation. I took a few lessons, but my sister gave me hers. So I have one, I just don't play it particularly well.
You talk about needing long tones. That is the instrument where you better play some long tones.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, one of my saxophone teachers, who's actually a pretty good flute player, he was telling me about that. I've got a few books and everything. Just I haven't put in the work. All right. So these days, your band's called the Sound Image Band.
Sound Image Band, yeah, that's one of my bands. That's my main income band. We do a lot of weddings and corporate affairs and things like that.
Okay. How long have you been part of that group? And did you start it?
Um, I think that I went back to playing. Well, I had a period of time that from like '98 to 2004 where I wasn't playing at all. due to some family things, and then I went back, part time in 2004 to that band, which was a band of my friends that I had played in the rock and roll circuit with and everything, and I wasn't one of the original members, but I've been playing, I guess, since 2004. Now that I've thought about it.
Okay, so that's a pretty good number of years. And
Yeah.
what have been some of your favorite gigs to play with that band?
Well, it's all really good musicians, and certain of the instruments, like keyboards and drums, we use sort of like a rotating crop of players. So there's these great players from the local area, always sitting in with us and presenting something different. And what I really enjoy is when I get to play the cocktail hours and the ceremonies too. But the cocktail hours is where I really get to play a little jazz and stuff like that. So, I mean, I enjoy 90% of the jobs that we do. The ones that aren't fun to do are usually the ones not so much musically, but because you're playing at a place where they're not so nice to the band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that goes.
No, that goes.
All right.
All right.
Let's see. How you practice? How do you approach that?
How do you approach that?
That's an interesting question because that changes from time to time. Right now, I happen to be practicing a lot, and there are times when I concentrate more on technical aspects of playing, and I'm doing a lot of things regarding working on sound, working on things for my fingers, and just being a better player on the horn and being more connected to the instrument. And then there are times that I'm always working on repertoire, but sometimes I concentrate on that a little bit more because I feel like that's a lot of how I learn about harmony and things like that, and helps me expand my improvisation and things. Just even sometimes by learning a song and learning the melody and really getting inside like the lyrics of a ballad or something like that, I consider practice too, because it just adds to the total picture. So now I probably split it up in thirds. Like I do about a third of working on my sound and things like that, a third of working on technique, and a third of working on repertoire.
Okay.
And I try and save a little bit of time for songwriting too.
Okay, nice. Okay. How much do you do that, the songwriting?
It's funny because I hadn't done a lot of it for a number of years. I just was gigging and practicing and concentrating on saxophone. And I have another band called Crying Mothers that's a blues rock band. And last year I really reopened the door to songwriting. And it's funny because I hadn't written for a long time, and it was like a rush of songs just came out, and then it reminded me about a bunch of things that I had, semi in the works and things like that. So I spent a lot of time last year around this time starting to write music for this album that we're almost done with, and that was for Crying Mothers. But I'm also working now to try and do an album of instrumental saxophone music that really reflects who I am.
Okay, that's cool. I'd love to check that out when it's coming out there.
Thanks. I'll make sure you definitely hear it.
Okay. When you practice technique, do you tend to use like classical music, or how do you approach that?
I use some of the basic things that I always used, like close method and universal saxophone method. You could always crack the book anywhere and work on some things. I like to work on sight reading with jazz etudes, and because I I do all the graphics for Greg Fishman. I wind up getting all of Greg Fishman's etude books, and they're a great practice tool. So I use those mainly for sight reading and things like that. What else do I use? And then I make up a lot of exercises. Like if I say, okay, I think I need some work, and I'll work on exercises like scales and thirds and fifths, and like just mixing intervals and stuff like that to try and just get comfortable with the jumps and being up in that register.
Okay. Nice. Do you practice with a metronome too? Do you do the like 60 BPM thing, like Reynolds is talking about?
I do. I used to, practice at a faster tempo, but since Bob Reynolds talk about practicing slower, I've slowed it down, and it's funny because it's harder to practice really slowly like that, and to really feel the time at that tempo, And I use it. I like to use like one of those old school metronomes that makes the real kind of loud click, and if it's not driving my family crazy, I'll use it throughout the whole practice. If it's driving them crazy, I'll do something like put on Band in a Box and use just like a beat of some sort.
Okay, nice. Do you use like iReal Pro, or do you tend to use Band in a Box to do something like that?
I love Band in a Box. I bought the version. I think it's the 2014 version. I would love to have the 2016 version, but I can't afford it right this second. But it has something called Real Tracks, which are actual, musical performances, and I use that program for practicing, and I use it for writing, and I use it for creating backing tracks because I do a lot of like cocktail hours and things like that solo. So I've created a lot of my own backing tracks, and I use a variety of things like Band in a Box and GarageBand and some other things that are available.
Okay. Yeah, I have Band in the Box. I haven't gotten too deep into how to use it very effectively. But
It's a great program, and you could use it in many different ways, but it's really great for practicing.
okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out more.
You could even set it to start slowly, and then as it goes, each chorus get a little bit faster, and this way you automate some of that stuff, and it goes quicker.
Yeah. Sometimes it's good to help get the robots. At what point did you meet Victor Wooten?
I met Victor Wooten because I'm good friends with Bob Franchescini, and also Danette, who's Bob's wife, is Victor's manager.
Oh, okay.
So Bob lives. It's a funny story about how he wound up living right around the block from me, but he lives right around the block from me, and Victor's here every once in a while. And I first met Victor here in New York, and then obviously got friendlier with him at camp, and even spent a little bit of time hanging out at his house and whatnot. So. And learned how to track animals with him this year.
Nice. Yeah, he knows a lot of things.
I think you were there too.
yeah, I was there. Yeah, I'd actually gone to his camp in 2010 for the first time when he just opened it up to other instruments. So yeah, I think I always had in my mind I wanted to go back, but I wasn't quite sure when. And then I saw the saxophone camp with the three Bobs, and it seemed like the right time to go. And then I thought it was cool that you were going to be there. I didn't expect that. I was like, oh, all right, nice.
Yeah, I just really feel fortunate that they let me come and help out a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I think they appreciate what you're doing too. You showed us some stuff, and it was kind of it was like a different atmosphere. We like relaxed a little bit that first day. We were just jamming out. And there's just so much.
I did a little more. I guess like maybe teaching sort of approach last year because I had more sessions.
All right.
And but this year I was happy to let everybody sort of have those moments to I got to play a little bit. I just got to blow a little bit and relax. So
Yeah.
that's an important thing. And so I'll do it if they keep letting me do it.
Yeah. I mean, seems like it's working out. It's helping people, and you're enjoying it. So
Yep.
good. Nice. Let's see. Are there any like new musicians you've been listening to lately? Any bands that you'd recommend checking out?
Uh, Let me think. Always listening to stuff. What am I into right now? Well, right now I'm listening to a CD by a guy, John Gordon. He's an alto saxophonist, and I don't know, he just flew right under my radar, and it turns out he grew up in Staten Island,
Okay.
and he's an outstanding jazz musician, and I'm checking that out. And I'm really loving Bob Reynolds' music because I feel very close to it. Personally, my own musical style, I think is very close to his sensibilities. So I've been checking that out lately. I love Bob Franchescini and anything that he's up to, and Seamus Blake, Joshua Redman. But I listen to all kinds of music. I mean, I'll listen to country music. I listen to classical music. I'm just like a classic, flipper through the dial or, through Spotify or something like that. I'm always listening to different stuff.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to check out a few of those guys. For Bob Franceschini, like you listen to stuff with like the Yellow Jackets or with some other groups, or
He's been, doing some other projects, and what's cool is that sometimes, like if he's recording some solos or parts or something, he'll ask my opinion about stuff. So I'll hear stuff that's not even released or anything,
That's pretty cool.
But yeah, he's done some great stuff with a friend of mine, Marty Scheller Ensemble. He's done some recordings with a band called Seis del Solar, which was Ruben Blades' backing band, and really cool jazz, Latin stuff. And of course the Mike Stern stuff.
All right, nice. Yeah. He's telling me he goes on like tour with like Willie Colon and some people too. He plays a bunch of like, Latin salsa.
Yep.
So that sounds pretty cool.
Definitely, known in the Latin community, Latin jazz community for sure.
Nice. That's pretty cool. All right, let's see. Do you have any other recommendations for like people learning to play the saxophone, maybe like earlier on?
Well, this is usually where, people will say, well, you have to play your long tones and you have to learn your scales and you got to do this and that, which is absolutely vitally important. But whenever I've had the opportunity to work with, a younger person especially or even an older person that wants to just get going with saxophone, first thing is listening, and what I'll usually do is just recommend people who I love, like my favorite players, and things that I love to listen to.
Okay.
And one sort of lost art, I think, is playing along with the actual recordings of things that you like. As opposed to like playing along with Jamie Ebersold tracks or whatever other tracks are out there. That's cool, but when you're learning to be able to play along with the Miles Davis Quartet and listen to the solos before and after, like the piano solo, and play over the piano solo, you're going to hear a lot of stuff, a lot of language and things, and develop your ear in ways that sitting and simply, working on rudiments is not going to do. So you do have to do the long tones to develop your sound. You do have to do scales, of course, and chords and arpeggios and things like that. But really listening to great music and playing along with great music is very important. And something that I used to like to do, I mean, I know radio isn't really that as popular with a lot of people these days as the internet, but you know, I used to put on the radio and start all the way down at the end and play along with everything that had music along the way. Didn't matter what style it was or whatever, but you know, find the key, play along, try and figure out something that fits. Classical music, country music, Latin music, jazz, rock, everything. And that just develops your ear. So, I mean, that's probably my biggest recommendation is play along with music.
Yeah,
You know,
sounds like
play
a good
with
idea.
people. If you have people, you know, that you can play with too, that's really important. And you know, use the blank tracks, the Aebersold tracks and things like that to work on specific things. But playing along with that with music that's you know that's great and you know the players that you love is really important to development.
Okay, yeah. Actually, that reminds me of the story within the music lesson about how Michael comes to his house and he puts on some Miles Davis and they start playing along. And actually, one of my teachers, we played along with like Horace Silver and Joe Henderson, like pretty early on. I was maybe 12 years old, and we were playing along with that track, soloing over the bass solo, the piano solo, trying to make it work. And hey, it feels like you're playing with the real people, which is pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, great recommendation. I think it's something that, yeah, people should probably be doing more of. And I like the radio thing. I hadn't really thought about doing that, but that's cool. Like getting like comfortable with different styles and everything.
yeah. I mean, it's just you know, it's right there for you. It's very easy to just stand in front of it and just keep you know heading down the dial and you know, especially when you know you're really trying to develop your ear and you know the goal really is to be able to play what you hear and there are a lot of other things that you'll do to develop your ear later in terms of like you know learning intervals and you know identifying intervals and things like that. You'll work on that later, but when you're starting, playing along with music, finding the key, even if you're you know playing at a very rudimentary level, uh, and you're just finding two notes and playing something rhythmically with those two notes that you can hear work, you're developing rhythm, you're developing your ear, you're developing you know a sense of harmony, all those things. So it's pretty effective, I think. At least that's what made me into the player that I am. You know, that's what I loved to do for hours when I was a kid. So
Yeah, yeah, no, it
I don't know if
sounds
that's a
like a good thing.
good or bad thing, actually, but
I would think it's a good thing. That actually reminds me, I went to a rehearsal with a rock band last week, and they had like a huge repertoire, like 50 or more songs, and I'd heard them before, but I'd never played them. So I was kind of doing that. I was like playing a couple notes, playing a couple more notes, trying to like just put in simple ideas. And
sure.
yeah, no, it definitely works, and it sounds good. Like if you have a good tone, you play with rhythm. Um, I think
That's
that's a solid approach.
totally important too, right? I mean, having sound first, you could play less and sound great if you have a great sound.
Yeah, definitely. A question I'm just curious about is how did you find Sax Station? Like, what made you stop on by the website?
Um, I'm pretty sure that at the time that I found Sax Station, I was like really, you know, trying to refocus myself because you know, my earlier life before I had my playing hiatus, um, you know, I practiced, but then I got into a thing where I was always gigging and always playing and not practicing as much, and you know, then I had that kind of like a 6 year stretch where I didn't really practice or play much at all. When I went back to it and I started playing and heard myself playing like, you know, my earlier days, I thought to myself, I just have to, you know, get back to work and make myself a better player. and I was looking for different things online that just were out there and helpful. So you came up in one of the searches that I found, and I did get some very helpful things out of your website.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, I started actually 10 years ago at this point. So I was in college at that time. So I was just kind of writing some ideas I heard. We went to like the Reno Jazz Festival. I wrote some ideas I learned from like Maria Schneider and some different people. They talked about composing, about playing. I think Dave Petro was there. He had some ideas. One of the things he was talking about was like playing a melody and switching to the solo, switching back to the melody, switching to the solo, like at any point whenever you wanted to, just like knowing the melody really well and knowing exactly where you were in the song. So
And try to do that without any music, any backing.
yeah,
That's something that I like to work on when I'm working on repertoire. Usually I start. Well, I like to learn melodies without music if I can. I mean, if it's a more complex melody, I'll search out the sheet music or whatever. But a lot of times I'm trying to learn things by ear, and then I'll play with some established recordings that I like of it. Then maybe I'll look for a backing track and play with that a little bit. But then my ultimate goal is to work to being able to play in time, stay with the form of the tune, and improvise start to finish. And that's a tough thing to do, and it takes a while, and I still struggle with some of that stuff. So it's a great exercise.
definitely. Cool. Well, I think that's probably about the questions I have for today. I appreciate your time, and I think what you're saying will maybe help some people who are checking it out.
I appreciate it. I hope you edit it into something more coherent. I'm not used to being interviewed, so.
Yeah, I'll see what I can do. There's a few moments with the connection and everything too. But
Take free reign.
all right, cool. Sounds good. All right, thanks, Russ.
Awesome. Thank you, Neal. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Good talking to you.
All right, talk to you later.
Take care.